Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Stepping now. I'm already dead. Yeah. I am already dead.
Hey guys, coming in. This is my review for the first season of the CW show iZombie, and let's get into the show because way back when this first season premiered, I was planning on reviewing it. I held off on it because I didn't think the show was going to be good. I really didn't. It was a dumb idea. I thought that it was going to be a bad show. I thought it just sounded really stupid, and I wasn't interested. It felt like a show I was going to drop 3 episodes in, so I'm like, alright, I'm not going to dedicate myself to a show, then I'm probably just going to drop anyway, so I might as well not review it. However, over time, after season 1, I'm like, alright, I'm going to binge season 1, and I planned on binging it last year, and for some reason, I never did. But season 3, of course, is coming out this Tuesday, so I figured now would be the perfect time to binge the show. So I did finally finish season 1 of iZombie, and after finishing it, what did I think of this show? Damn, did this surprise me, because this show, I really did love this show, honestly. I thought this was a very different kind of zombie show, but all the better for it. It's, like I said, a very unconventional take. There's a lot of different stuff in the show that you really have not seen before, but I really did love the way the show is portrayed overall. But let's get into the plot of iZombie, which is way different than any other zombie show you've ever seen in your life, probably. Basically, we focus on this girl, Liv. Now, Liv was a medical examiner. She had a fiance, she had a best friend. Her life was pretty much, ideal. She had a lot of great stuff in her life. But one day she went to this boat party, where everyone is taking, a lot of people are taking this designer drug, called Utopium. What she doesn't know is once you take this drug, you basically begin to feel all the symptoms of becoming a zombie. She essentially ends up dying at this party, but she doesn't die. She comes back as a zombie, but not a zombie in the way that you and I would think a zombie is. This is a zombie that is essentially just undead. She's not dead, she's just undead, and she survives by eating the brains, of people who have died or people that have lived and things like that. And she decides to take a job at the King County morgue, where her friend Ravi very quickly realizes that she's a zombie. While she also becomes a police detective, an assistant for a police detective named Clive Babineau, and that basically is the plot of iZombie overall. But let's just get into this first season, talk about everything that really works, starting off with the cast. The thing that completely anchors the show. If it had not been for the cast in the show, this show would have failed. I mean, this show completely relies on the chemistry of the characters, the charisma of the actors, and how interesting they really are. Which, luckily for the show, every character is great. There really is not a bad character in there. For me, at least, I could not find a weak link in the show, and I think everyone really did a great job. But let's first talk about our star here, Rose McIver as Liv Moore. Now, I've seen this actress before. She was in Petals on the Wind. She was also in, I believe, Once Upon a Time. But she gives it her all in this performance, and she completely anchors this show. Her performance as Liv Moore is fantastic. She's got this character down to a T. The first few seconds, I mean, you're extremely compelled by her character. There's a lot of monologues with her throughout the show, and she's going through, obviously, a very interesting situation where she is a zombie, and she is trying to get used to life, working as a zombie. And there's a lot of interesting stuff with her character that I really did love. The idea that she has to constantly consume these brains to just maintain her humanity. And if she doesn't, essentially, if you don't eat brains on this show, you basically start to take on the effects of what we know a zombie is, which I thought was a really cool approach. Again, something we really haven't seen before, but there's a lot of cool vulnerabilities to her character. But not just that, when Liv eats a brain on this show, she begins to take on a lot of the, a lot of the effects and personalities, and a lot of the intricacies of that specific person. So, for example, there's an episode where there's this mother basically who died and she wanted to have a baby. So Liv constantly basically randomly gets this idea to have a baby. And I thought it was a really cool way the show did that, because you can have this character and she's not annoying because she's kind of different every episode. And it sounds weird. It sounds like it doesn't work because, oh, this character's all over the place. But no, that's not the case. That's how she has to live. She has to have these different sort of, side effects, and she has to sort of take on these different sort of personalities. But she does such a great job. She's very funny. She also goes through some very sympathetic stuff. She's also trying to lead a normal life, and the way that some people don't believe that she's a zombie, you do kind of have to suspend your disbelief. But if you do, she is a very well done character. I think she's probably one of the best written zombie characters I've seen in quite a while. Like I said, it's very different than your other characters, but she really did do a great job. She had so much, you can tell she's having so much fun in the role. She put so much heart and soul into it, and because of that, she really does, like I said, anchor the show quite well. And for a show like this, you really need your lead to be great, and luckily Rose McGiver completely slays this role. She really is fantastic. So then the rest of the cast here also is pretty great. I don't really think, like I said, there was a weak link in this cast. But if I do have to have one complaint, that some of the characters in this first season I don't think are as developed, which isn't a problem. They're probably going to be more developed as time goes on, especially Malcolm Goodwin as Clive Babineau. Now, I really like this character. I rarely like a character like Clive Babineau. He is your police detective, but he's not your typical police detective. He's a little bit different than that. Basically, we see in this episode that, we see in the show that he's newly transferred from Vice to Homicide, and he gets Liv's help to solve crimes. So he's not exactly used to dealing with Homicide. He's just recently been transferred to that, and basically, you can tell throughout the show that he knows something's going on there, but he doesn't really know what it is, and he's the only character in this first season who doesn't find out that Liv is, that Liv is a zombie. He knows she's psychic, but he doesn't know that she is a zombie. Now, obviously, she's not just psychic, she's also a zombie, which I thought was kind of cool, the way that he definitely is starting to get suspicious of that. But we see not a lot else with this character. Their chemistry is really very good, though. I really like the chemistry between these two. It's not forced. It's very natural. They work very well together. It's one of the most essential parts of the show is for their chemistry to work, and definitely he did a very good job. I really like what they did with his character. Even though, like I said, of all the characters, he's the one that's definitely the least developed. He still was quite great. But that's not to say for Raul Coley as Dr. Ravi, because Ravi actually is very much developed. Ravi, like I said, he's the first person to realize that Liv is a zombie, and it doesn't take long at all. Immediately, he knows, basically, Liv's secret, and he assists her whatever he can do to protect her. And I really like where they take his character. There's a lot of stuff going on. We got this thing where he used to work for the Centers of Disease Control, but he was fired for his obsession with preparing an attack with biological weapons. He definitely is a scientist, but in a nice twist, he's not the nerdy guy. He's not the guy who's, obsessed with this stuff, and he doesn't know how to talk to girls. No, he has a huge crush on Peyton's friend, Liv's friend Peyton, and he doesn't try to hide it. He wants to go out with her. He wants to, he makes it very apparent that he likes her. And I thought that was a really nice side plot what they had there, but they also really did rely on each other. The way that Ravi really wanted to help Liv, the way that she really wanted to help him. I thought their bond was definitely very strong. I thought these three worked very well together, and they definitely are one of the essential parts of the show, and for the most part, I thought they all worked very, very well. And then Robert Buckley plays Major, who is Liv's ex-fiance, but unlike other shows, he's not the annoying ex-fiance. He's not just doing this because he wants to get back together with her. In fact, very quickly, he ends things with her, and it's not because of the fact that he thinks, obviously she's different. He doesn't understand why she's sending him mixed signals, but as we can see throughout this first season, she wants to get back to that normal life. She wants to be able to have him back in her life, but she knows it's way too complicated. She doesn't want him to get involved with everything that's going on, and because of that, Major goes through quite a problematic arc this season, where at first, he thinks he's crazy. He does, because he's heard of this, drug. He can tell that there's definitely zombies out there. He checks himself into a medical institution because he thinks he's just going insane. There's no way that zombies can be real. That's just not possible that something can happen. But after several teens end up going missing, he actually does his own little side investigation of this thing called the Candyman, and he ends up getting himself into a lot more troubled waters and treacherous situations than he should. And I thought as a whole, his character was actually very well done. He could have easily been very bland and very boring, but they took him in a really good direction, and he added a lot of pathos to his character. You really cared about him as a whole, because you knew exactly what he was getting himself into, but it was inevitable what was essentially going to happen with him. There was a lot of stuff that goes down in the finale, but it was, like I said, it was inevitable what was going to happen. I thought his side investigation was definitely very well done. Liv doesn't want him to do it, obviously, because it involves zombies, and she knows that he's going to get hurt, probably. So I really like where his character went. I thought he definitely did a very good job, and like I said, he could have easily been the annoying ex-fiance, but he was anything but that. In fact, that's not really the role he plays here. Most of this season is Liv getting over Major and trying to be able to move on from that. Even though she wants to be able to have that normal life, there are a lot of limitations, and one of that is that she can't be with Major. Things are just too complicated, and I really like the way the show did explore that. However, if I had to pick a favorite character in the show, as much as I do love Rose McGiver, by far my favorite performance in the show has to be David Anders as Blaine McDonagh. This character is fucking insane. I mean, he really... It's, again, a very unconventional type villain for this show, but he did an incredible job in this first episode, in this first season. I love what he did as this character, because he essentially is the drug dealer. He is the one who's actually the reason for causing the zombie outbreak. And you got a side story going. For a lot of the show, he is basically the side story where there's a lot going on with him. But you really do care about Blaine as well, because his rich father, we see, considers him a disappointment because he gives him money for failed businesses, and he, resorts to grave robbing to access brains. I mean, he is desperate to get brains in any way he can, and he's basically addicted to brains, but in reality, he's actually set up a new drug ring where customers are other zombies, and product is the brain of murdered local homeless teens. And his base is basically an operation in the first season, like this local butcher shop, which he runs a home delivery service of gourmet prepared brain media for wealthy zombie customers, and he gets into a lot of crazy situations with that. But David Anders just has so much charisma as this role. I mean, there are times you fucking hate this character because he does some really, really irrational things, but he is so great as him as well. I mean, he really is his character down to a T. He is compelling, he's scary, he's menacing, he is also kind of sympathetic. You can understand why he's doing what he can. Like I said, he's very addicted to brains in this first season, but I really like what he had to do here. I thought he was absolutely incredible in this first season. It's not surprising that he does eventually become the villain in this first season, but he did such an incredible job. I love where they took him towards the end of the show. I can't wait to see where they're going to go with him in season 2. Like I said, a lot of this first season, he is very much to the side of things, but I thought overall he did an incredible job. I loved his character as a whole. I thought he really did add a lot to the show, and this is one of those shows where your hero is only as good as your villain, and this villain is fucking great. I love what they do with him. I thought he really added a lot to this first season, and I don't think the show would be as good if it wasn't for David Anders' Blaine. I think the other characters are great, but Blaine really was that one character that I just couldn't wait to see every single episode. Every scene he was on, I thought was absolute perfection. I thought he did such a great job. Like I said, I thought he had this character down to a T, and I'm really interested in seeing where they're going to take him in season 2. And then the only other character to really talk about, even though she's not a main character yet, she will actually be in season 3, is Ali Mashak as Peyton. This is Liv's best friend, and throughout a lot of the first season, that's exactly what she is. She's Liv's best friend. She doesn't really have much else of a role but that, but that's because she's not a main character. She works as a district attorney for the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and she can sometimes get a little bit annoying, but at the same time, you can understand where she's coming from, that she gets that Liv, there's a lot of things that Liv isn't telling her, and she feels like she's very in the dark about a lot of things. So this is obviously very much troubling Peyton. She knows definitely something's going on with Liv, but Liv won't just come forward and say what's actually, going on and what's actually happened and things like that. She just won't come forward about it because obviously, again, she doesn't want Peyton to get involved with what actually is happening. But Ali Mashak does a very good job as this character. I thought overall she was definitely very good in this first season. They didn't give her a ton to do, but as a whole, I definitely really did like her. And I thought, like I said, this cast in general really anchors the show quite well. It's one of the things that I think the shows most rely on, and they did a very good job with relying on the cast throughout the season because they really are fantastic. So that's really all I have to say about the cast. Now let's get to the directing and the writing, because the directing for the show is very different than your typical zombie show. It's not a horror show, let me say that. It's really not a horror show at all. If anything, it's kind of like a comedy drama in many ways. There definitely is the horror element in there because, I mean, they still are zombies. And like I said, if they don't get the right amount of brains, they do turn to full-fledged zombies, which we see many of throughout this first season. But I thought the directing was really cool, actually, because we do go a lot back and forth between comedy and horror, and I thought they did a really good job with that in this first season. There's a lot of really fun humor, and the show really does play with it quite well. You know, the idea of what would happen if you were a zombie, what kind of stuff do you have to do, what limitations do you have, what access do you have. Like I said, that whole idea of Liv being psychic, it adds a whole new dynamic to this show, and I think the show really established the tone very quickly. Like, right in the first 3 minutes, you know exactly what kind of shows is going to be, and if you're not into the first 3 minutes of the show, you might as well not watch this show, because immediately they establish what the show is, and I thought they did that quite well in a way that other shows don't. But this show is quite fast-paced, and I thought it actually benefited them quite well, that I think they handled the comedy stuff quite well, but also the drama. You know, you really care about Liv as a character. You want to see her be able to live that normal life, even though it's not possible to do. You want to see her attempt to do that, and I think, again, that whole arc was very interesting as well. There's also the character Lowell, who Liv tries to have a relationship with, and even, you know, he's also a zombie, but things end up going a bit haywire there as well. I'll get into that in the spoilers, but I thought that that was definitely very interesting. I really like what they did with the comedy in this show, and I thought, like I said, the directing was definitely very well done. Now let's get to the writing, because the writing I thought was great throughout this first season. I really don't have many complaints with the writing. I thought it was very funny, and I thought the way they told the story, they really did take their time with it. They didn't try to go all out in the first few episodes. In fact, the first few episodes, I wouldn't say is slow. It's just solid. Very well is solid storytelling. It's a lot of setting up things. You know, Blaine wants Liv to work for him. She kind of declines because she knows the kind of stuff he's involved in. So you got a lot of Blaine and Liv throughout the show. They're kind of doing their own little thing, but eventually those two do collide, and I think they did that quite well. Like, they kept those two stories quite separate, but also kind of together, because Major is very much involved in Blaine's story, but he's also involved in Liv's story, and I like the way that Major is actually two things that connect those things together. I thought that was really cool the way they did that. And I thought, like I said, the drama of Liv trying to maintain a relationship with this guy, Lowell, I thought that whole storyline was very interesting. It's really cute as well. You care about Lowell, you want her to be able to maintain this relation with him. He also goes through the same thing, like I said, where there's an episode where he ends up being gay, so she has to deal with that, and, you know, obviously he's not gay in the next episode because he eats a different brain, and I thought that was cool, the way the show did that, how, you know, like I said, everyone inhabits different aspects of that personality. I just thought that was really cool the way the show did that, different than other zombie shows have. My main problem with this show is that half of the show, while I said it is very story-driven, half of the show is a procedural, and that is definitely something that I think does corrupt this show a bit. While I think the procedural aspect overall is interesting, it's not as good as I think the comedy and the serious moments are for the show. I think overall the procedural elements, they're interesting. I don't think they're bad. Like, I've definitely seen worse procedural shows out there. This isn't like a Law and Order or something like that where it's just a slog to get through because it's so boring. No, a lot of times the cases are fun. They just don't add a ton to the show, except for the fact that, like I said, Liv does take on different personality traits from these characters. Other than that, I didn't really feel the procedural added much to the show as a whole, and I just felt like the procedural, some of the episodes, they focused a little bit too much on the cases, and the cases as a whole, they were not that interesting. I could predict them very quickly. A lot of times I always go, okay, I think that's the person who did it, and I was right, and that was just not the most interesting part of the show. But because the rest of the show is so interesting, it's really not that much of an issue. I thought the rest of the show was very strong. I thought the rest of the writing definitely did a very good job with, and that was something I definitely really did love. Also, the cinematography for the show, for a basic cable show, is fantastic. I think the cinematography here and the effects looked amazing. Just the way the zombies looked in general, just like the makeup on Liv and Blaine, they look great. I mean, these are exactly what zombies would look like if you were to put them in real life. You know, it's not exaggerated, it's very simplistic, but it's nothing too overly complicated. It's nothing too unbelievable or impractical, and I thought they did that quite well when it came to the cinematography. I definitely really did like the way the zombies looked. I thought they looked definitely very well done, and like I said, this is a world where The Walking Dead exists, Dawn of the Dead exists. It's just zombies happen to be able to live in this world, and I like the way that zombies coexist in this world, but all the zombie stuff that we know is still out there. It's a very much, like I said, a very realistic take on that stuff, and I thought overall that was definitely very well done. The score was definitely really good. Don't really have much to say about the score. And then the editing to each episode, like I said, this is a very fast-paced show. A lot does happen in every episode, and I like that. Like, they stuck with that formula. I thought it worked quite well for them, and that was something I definitely really did enjoy, was the editing. So now that I've talked about all the technical stuff, involving this season and regarding, the characters and things like that, now I will jump into spoilers, which I'm not going to talk about every single thing that happened this season because this video would be over 40 minutes long if I did that, but I am going to get into a lot of what does go down, much of the major stuff that does happen, not just stuff involving the character of Major, I mean like major stuff that happens in the show. So if you guys haven't seen the first season, do not watch the rest of this review. I'm really going to get deep into what goes down. Let's first talk about Liv and Lowell, because I really did like these two as a couple. I like they tried to keep things normal. Like I said, Lowell, he eats brains a lot. Liv is also eating brains. They're trying to find a way to stay as a couple. But over time, that does become quite hard because Blaine is out there and he's constantly giving Lowell brains. And after a while, they start to see how Blaine is becoming sort of a problem because he's killing a lot of people. Like I said, Major is very much involved with this mystery of the Candyman. And over time, Lowell really wants to step up and help Liv because Liv still cares about Major. Even though Major's not with her, she obviously is still going to care about him. And she is definitely, very worried about what he's getting himself involved in. So she's trying to figure out the best approach. Lowell thinks the best way to do it is just to kill Blaine. However, Liv is not really into that. And especially after Blaine kills Major's friend Jerome, Lowell feels it's the only way to do it, that he needs to kill Blaine himself. And even though Liv, thinks that it's not the best idea, Lowell still decides to do it basically for Liv. And when he attempts to kill Blaine, he actually ends up being shot by Blaine. And yeah, Lowell's dead. And I thought it was a very surprising turn for the show to go, but all the better for it, because this is really when the season gets great. It's after Blaine kills Lowell, Liv's taking the custody, she's questioned by the police about everything that happened, but instead of brooding over it, while she definitely doesn't get over Lowell's death necessarily, she decides to just go on with things, because she's already so involved with the case and things like that she just wants to continue, working with Clive and trying to help him out and things like that, which I thought was definitely very interesting. But then there's this character of Sebastian that comes into the mix, and he ends up attacking Liv, unaware that she's a zombie. He tries to drown her, but she overpowers him, and Major believes that he's going crazy, admits himself for psychiatric help at this point. He feels that, like I said, it's just not working out for him at all. And he ends up running into this guy who basically tells him about the zombies. And that's something that Major gets himself involved in throughout the season, that he starts to realize, what's really going on with the zombies. And we get to the last three episodes. The last three episodes of the season are truly great. Like I said, the last act of the season is fantastic. They really knew how to end things quite well in this final act here. I thought they did a great job with that. But episode 11, like I said, you got a normal case going on here where we focus on Major's friend Scott E. He was murdered, and basically, after Liv finds Scott E.'s murderer in his phone, Major declares to Liv that he wants to hunt down and kill all of the zombies. Now that he knows these zombies are out there, he wants to essentially be a zombie killer. He wants to kill every single last one of them. Problem is, of course, Liv is a zombie, as we know. So this is obviously a problem, and I like the way that they really set up that story, because we know that Major's definitely getting himself involved with what's going on. Liv's not going to die. Blaine's not going to die. So who knew where this was going to go? And I thought they took this in a very interesting direction. Episode 12, though, is extremely well done, because we finally get into Sebastian's backstory, basically. We go to the evening of his fight with Liv. He actually awakens as a zombie, and he's been infected by Liv's blood. He's now a zombie, and he's got a lot of problems where basically they did a very good job of getting us involved with him. He's hit by a group where the local rock band players with their stolen car, and Liv and Clive, they're trying to investigate the murder of everything that went down. And we see Ravi's cured zombie rat actually dies, because he has the zombie rat throughout the show who also was getting the brain, so the rat would still live, but it ends up dying. So he restarts the experiment with actually the last utopium, and Liv realizes that Sebastian's undead and that she's the reason for his condition. So she's going through a big situation here where she is the reason for it. This wasn't because of Blaine. This is solely because of her. And Sebastian ends up showing up to her apartment just to kill her, and he attacks her, and right when these two are attacking, which a pretty well done fight scene, may I add, the fight scenes on the show are actually really well done, and they're quite graphic. Peyton actually arrives in the middle of it, and this is where Liv is basically forced to admit to her that she is a zombie and what she's capable of, and this freaks Peyton out, obviously. I mean, her friend is a zombie. This is nothing that Peyton ever suspected, and she can't believe that, Liv would get herself involved with something like this, but Peyton actually ends up abandoning her, which I thought was very smart for her to do, obviously. She's terrified of what's going on, so Peyton ends up leaving. It's a very sad situation, but Major prepares to attack Blaine's meat shop, only to be captured, and basically he ends up trying to attack Blaine, but he actually is captured in the end of it. Liv's brother actually drops an application, is hired by Blaine as his new errand boy, and basically at the very end we see some begins killing off the remaining rock band players responsible for hitting Sebastian, and that's everything that goes down until the finale. But now we're going to jump into the finale. So now we'll jump into the finale, which the finale of this season is incredible. I love pretty much everything that went down in this finale. Throughout a lot of this finale, Major is being held hostage by Blaine. Blaine is trying to get into his head and pick his brain, essentially, in the best way that he can, and he forced him to reveal the location of the stolen brains, basically, because he know that Major is responsible for it, so we got that going on. But we got Liv and Clive investigating the rock band killings after Teresa was found murdered, and they meet with Max Rager. Now, Max Rager is this drink, basically, this drink company. They maintain that Sebastian's not been working at the company, because he actually worked at Max Rager, and I like the way that a lot of these, seemingly unconnected killings actually connected at the end of the season. I thought they did that quite well in a way that other procedural shows don't know how to do that. This season did that quite well, and I really love the way they handled that in this season, I have to say. So Basically, the character of Vaughn, who is the CEO, he knows that Sebastian and Liv are actually zombies, that Max Rager mixed with Utopium is the original cause, that it's Max Rager actually that's doing it. It's not Blaine, it's Max Rager. So he asks his scientists to ensure that their new drink won't have the same problem. So I like that actually turned out was the same problem there, and that's solved very quickly. We see, that's very quickly solved, and then the rest of this episode is Liv trying to save Major, trying to make sure she can do what she can to save him. So throughout this episode, Blaine, like I said, he's making Major literally eat brains because he's trying to show him what he's going through, and Blaine ends up meeting Liv to obtain his brains, because Blaine at this point tells her that, look, if you're not going to get here, I'm going to cut out his brain, I'm going to eat it, because obviously he can't eat anyone else's brains. Major stole all of them, and it's understandable why Blaine is upset about that. But Major breaks out, he kills everyone in the shop, and basically Blaine tells Liv that there's no reason for her to be against him, and he really does outright threaten her. And what he says to her, you can really understand why he's doing this, because he tells her, look, I know all the locations of every single brain, I know every single person, I know I can identify to you every single zombie that's out there. There's no, you can't kill me for that reason. I can give you information. So he's really trying to do what he can to use himself, to benefit her. That's really what he's trying to do. He's trying to tell her, look, you can use me. You don't have to kill me. I can give you information about zombies that are much more powerful than I am. So I like the way he really did try to do that, but it's not enough, because he ends up stabbing Major just before Liv arrives, but she does use the cure on Blaine to prevent him from making more zombies, and Blaine is no longer a zombie in this season, we see. He now has the cure, which I thought was interesting that we saw. But yeah, he no longer is going to be able to make more zombies, and she turns Major into a zombie to save him. And Major's face when this happens, obviously he's not happy that this is going down, but there's not really much he can do about it, and he realizes that she's a zombie here. So like I said, yeah, Clive is the only character who doesn't know that Liv is a zombie. I'm sure this is going to change in season 2. But she later turns him back with the last cure. So Blaine is now, we now see that Major is basically undead at this point, and we end this season where there's this huge gas explosion, which Liv's brother is injured in. So we're gonna see how that plays out in season 2. But overall, this finale was very thrilling. It was riveting. It had me on the edge of my seat. I didn't really know where it was gonna go, and really, the finale I think was all the better for it. And I'm really interested in seeing where we're gonna go in season 2 because of it. So as a whole, guys, it's everything really to say when it comes to this first season of iZombie, but there's a lot of stuff I think this season set up quite well. First of all, we have this whole thing of Major now being a zombie. We know that Major obviously is now back to normal, but also Blaine. Blaine's no longer a zombie either because now he has the cure where he's back to normal. So I'm interested in seeing really what's going to happen there, how Blaine's going to be without being a zombie. If he can't, keep making zombies, what exactly is he going to be doing now? What exactly is Blaine's main purpose going to be? That's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what Blaine's life is going to be now that he can't keep, just making zombies over and over and over again because he's not a zombie anymore. And I think that definitely is very interesting that we took it in that direction. But also Major as well. Major is now undead, essentially. He's not a zombie, but he's also not, he's also not a living. He is completely undead. So I'm interested in seeing what we're going to do with Major as well. I think that whole storyline is going to be very interesting. Also, her brother. It seems like her brother's going to play a much more major role next year. We didn't see a lot of her brother this season, but we knew he was working for Blaine, so who knows what's going to happen there. I think that whole story is going to be interesting as well to see how we get involved with that. I think that's going to be quite interesting. I think Clive definitely is going to find out that Liv is a zombie. It just seems inevitable. He's the only one who doesn't know. He's got to definitely find out Liv is a zombie. It's definitely going to happen quite soon. And then Peyton, I think, is going to come back in the story. How is she going to recover from Liv's news that she's a zombie? What's going to happen there? We'll have to see really what ends up going down. Overall, guys, I really did love this first season. I think this was definitely a very well done first season as a whole. Like I said, I think they did a very good job with the connective tissue, just connecting everything together, really getting us involved with these stories. And as a whole, I think this is a much different zombie show than expected, but it's exactly the kind we need. Every zombie show, so many people say you can't make an original zombie show. That's essentially what happened here. This is a very different show than anything I've seen before. There's really nothing you'll see like it, and that's something I love so much about the show, is just how unique it was, how different it was, and how it decided to go about telling its story in a way that few shows don't. It understands procedurals better, it understands characters very well, and it understands the concept of comedy horror. I think the show just does that to get that down to a T. And as a whole, I really did love this first season, and I am going to give the first season of iZombie a 4.5 out of 5 or an A. So for guys, maybe this first season of iZombie, let me know what you guys thought of it overall. Loved your thoughts on it. Did you like this first season? Where do you think we're going to go in season 2? I know obviously season 2 already happened, but if you guys haven't seen season 2, where do you think we're going to go? If you have seen season 2, please try not to spoil it for me. I'm going to try to get it done the next few days. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but I'm going to try to get it done by Tuesday. We'll have to see what happens with that, and I will see you guys for that whenever that happens. Okay, bye.